Have you figured out why you can't quite hit the target the way you would like? You could be cross-eye dominant. In this video, I go over cross-eye dominance with my friend Marcelo. Welcome back everyone, we're going over cross-eye dominance. Now if you watch previous videos of mine, it was something I struggled quite intensely with. And so I brought my friend Marcelo here because I also want to get his perspective because he has to deal with this as well. He is an A class in production and limited, and he is on his way to getting that M card. Marcelo, I know when I first started this, I didn't know I was cross-eye dominant, and I had to figure that out the hard way, right? How did you ever figure out that you were cross-eye dominant?
So I had the same experience. Like I did not know what cross-eye dominance even was, or anything like that, right? It was just like you said in introduction, I couldn't hit the targets quite well. It couldn't feel like I caught myself like bending my head all the time, and I squint my eyes and like what's going on, and then I start reading about it and figure, okay, so that's that. You know, they get that little exercise that you do with your fingers to find out which one is the dominant eye, and I found out that I shoot with the right hand, but left eye is dominant. So that's how I found out that was going on with me, and I had to do something about it.
Yeah, and what's interesting is like, I know I found out the hard way. I'm like, I'm literally looking right at the target, right dead center, and it's 5 yards away. Why is it over here?
Right. Yeah, exactly. There's some interesting things that happen.
And so someone was actually kind enough to say, sir, you might be cross-eye dominant. And now I was on this journey of trying to figure out, well, what am I gonna do? Am I supposed to close my eye, or am I supposed to like lean my head? Like, what's going on here? And I think I went up and down on the internet trying to look for an ideal way to do this. So as I've gone through this, and I'm sure you have, I've evolved my way of doing it. But I think what makes your situation unique is you are like committed to irons.
Yes.
And there are
There
are a ton of iron shooters out there. So tell me how you deal with it from using irons.
What works for me is really, I need to block my dominant eye. So either, and there are two ways for me to do that. I can squint the dominant eye a little bit, which in the beginning I was just completely shutting the eye, and now I'm able to let the eye open as long as I squint a little bit, take the focus out of it, then the right eye will pick it up. Or completely close it, either just closing the eyes, or on the glasses, you just block one of the lenses in the glass. So he puts that like dot right there.
Tape or something disruptive.
I tried to put the piece of tape. It did not work for me either, because I only squint when I'm shooting. If I'm running, if I'm reloading, everything else, I have both eyes wide open, right? So with both eyes wide open, nothing in the middle of the lens, for me, I never quite got the habit of, just like get used to it and not look at it. It was always there for me, always reminding me like you got something in your lenses. And I just, okay, no.
It's a little delusional sometimes when
I'll
it's there.
keep squinting my eye, and I'll keep doing it. The interesting thing about it, and that's just, I'm glad you said about iron sights, because if I go to dot and I do some dry fire, at some point I'm gonna get to carry optics and open as well. I don't have that problem. I can pick it up with the right eye just fine.
Right.
The other thing for me, which might be the same for other people too, it might have something to do with dominance. I couldn't find anything scientific about it, but it's also my best eye.
Right.
So I have a little bit of astigmatism on the right, nothing on the left. Yeah. My left is 20/20, so that's also something that it makes it even more difficult to rewire my brain on, no, make this one the dominant one. Right. It's possible though, I've read that it's possible. People were able to successfully rewire and get the other eye dominant.
It's interesting, as you're reading a lot of stuff on the internet and as you're doing research, you find that there's just 50,000 different ways to do this. There really is. Right. And what I found is you have to find what works for you. And that's what you did. I know when I'm with shooting irons, I'm very target focused, right? And you know, everything, I think I've told you, everything within 7 yards for me is index when I'm doing irons. Now, when I have to slow down and get that long shot, what are you doing in that time?
On those kind of a very accurate precision thing that I'm gonna take my time, I'm gonna be front side focused. When you are indexing or just target focused, you're happy with anything within that alpha area, which is larger, right? At 25 yards, that becomes a dot. So it's like I can't really afford to do anything outside of that dot, right? So it's more front side focused.
So okay, so do you have to squint a little bit more?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. I squint, and because I wish I had that control of, like, if it's really a 3-yard target, I don't need to squint at all. I'm just looking at the target and put. I do it all the time. I'm not gonna lie. Like every time I'm even if it's a target really close distance on the draw, but I squint before the gun is there, so I'm not wasting any time to do it.
Right.
As
It's like trigger prepping.
Yeah, when
You're like
exactly.
trigger.
I couldn't
Prepping
shoot
your
before
eye.
because the gun wasn't ready yet, right? So when the gun is there, I'm already squinted a long time ago, and it's already there for me to pull the trigger.
We say squint when we're talking irons. That's important because you still want to have the ability to use both eyes.
Right.
Now, my challenge, I actually started on irons and I struggled with it. And also, once I discovered I was cross-eye dominant, that made things more interesting for me being a new shooter.
Now at least you know what's going on too, right?
Right. Well,
Part of the struggle, what it is.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm gonna try this Chapman stance or this Weaver stance. Yeah, it was a disaster for me. And the aha moment for me is when I slapped a dot on it. For me personally, what it naturally forced both my eyes to stay open. So when I am shooting carry optic, I shoot with both eyes fully wide open at all times. And so where my adjustment happens, what I learned is down in here, is when I have the gun up here, it actually just naturally, now that I've practiced it so many times, it just comes right up to my left eye.
So that's interesting. So when you're seeing the dot with the left eye, you still do the cross dominance with the dot. It just doesn't matter because it's just one plane and you don't need to put, okay.
Right.
That's interesting because when I do, I'm seeing with the right actually, the dot. But when I do dry firing and stuff, and I close both eyes to see which one is picking up, it's the right one that's picking up. I think that's because of the planes, right? Iron sights is 2 planes that need to align, and so as long as the gun is in front of that eye, it's easier.
Yeah, essentially what I'm doing is using your front sight rather than just having to deal with trying to line up 2 planes. It's critical in transitions to have that second eye available.
Yeah.
Because
it will help for sure.
Well, if you're leading with your eyes, right? If you lead with your eyes,
you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're doing what you're supposed to do.
It's kind of hard if you close one eye and try to lead like that. And it's interesting because I talked to Charlie Perez. He does the same thing, and he's a grandmaster. He talks about using the squint, right? It's not. There's a difference between closing your eye and a squint.
Yeah, it's just. Yeah, it's interesting. It's just a little bit. Like if I pull an iron sights gun in front of me right now here with both eyes open, it's gonna be all confusing, right? I'm gonna be seeing the front side. The rear side's gonna be completely disaligned because it's gonna be the left eye. So if I just shoot a little bit, it already aligns.
Right.
It seamlessly gets together. So,
right. And that's critical to think about as someone is developing.
Stand by.
Had 2 people analyze this. One is Matt Smith and another one is Darren Schmidt. And they noticed that I move a lot when I'm, drawing and this and that. They're like, and when I'm transitioning, there's so much drama. Well, what I learned was that I'm actually trying to adjust for, when you're doing these things in less than tenths of a second, you're by osmosis wanting to try and adjust it. And so what I've had to learn is to actually really relax my shoulders and also just really focus on the sight. And so because the more movement, kinetic movement we create, like things like this to adjust for this, which is say the cross-eye dominance, we end up scrubbing time trying to engage a target. And so that's one thing I would mention to our audience is as you're developing in this journey and you're having to deal with this, really start to minimize your movements. One other thing I'm going to touch on very briefly is PCC. Do you shoot PCC?
No,
okay.
I don't shoot at
Yeah,
all.
you're like, I'm a man.
That's not what I mean. I didn't say that. I just said I don't have a PCC.
So I do shoot the occasional PCC, and I actually have a very different technique in how I approach that, right? Because you have to shoulder this thing. Now the positive of that is it really sets up what eye you use.
Right.
Now what I've actually come accustomed to is using both hands and both eyes. When I actually started out a lot of my journey beforehand, like when I'd shoot the occasional skeet or shotgun, I'd actually shoot it left-handed because it was easier for me to see. And so if you watch me shoot a match, the occasional PCC match, if I get in a spot where the ray that's left-sided and it's very tight and there's tight shots, I'll literally just go, I'll shoot right-handed and then I will pull it back and I'll go back this way. You know, that really only works if you have a place to transition to.
Right.
Right? I wouldn't do it in one same spot.
Yeah, you're
right.
going to spend time doing that, so.
You know, as far as the actual rifle itself, I still will use both eyes. And I actually don't close my eyes on either of it. But when you're shouldered up here like that, it naturally engages this eye, at least for me.
Because it's so aligned, it's shoulder and it comes from, the gun is connected to your shoulder, so yeah, it's much easier to have the right eye picking up.
Yeah, just naturally.
The correct eye, I mean not the right side eye, but the correct eye picking up, yeah. Right. When I do like precision rifle, so I just shut one eye because it really doesn't matter.
Right.
You're sitting there, and it's like, take your time, so I don't
No one's really coming from you.
I'm just
about
looking at
1,000 yards
that,
away,
and
right?
yeah. But I could have both eyes open. It wouldn't change because your head is there laying on the on the stock, so there's no way that the other eye is gonna pick it up.
Are there things you would probably tell someone struggling in this? What are their first steps look like?
I think the most important thing I can say is, which was something I debated with myself on, it's like, you're gonna read a lot about, you have to have both eyes open all the time, or you're never gonna be a good shooter, right?
Right.
I think like, and then it was actually watching videos and stuff when I'd be, I'm sick in Europe and all stuff, and I'm seeing they had those clothes on the face of the shooter, and I saw a bunch of people squinting, world-class shooters shooting with one eye. So I said, oh, okay, so this is possible. This is,
like Eric Raffel.
Yeah, it's kind of BS that you have to have. There's only one way of doing things.
Correct.
So yeah, I think the most important thing I can say is like, find out what works for you, and just go for it. Dedicate, put time on it, put effort, and hard work pays out, and it will work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I never would look at it as a disadvantage of any kind. It's just something that you got to work at.
Yeah.
And then after time, you find out that you look out there, you just look as natural as anybody else.
Yeah.
Nobody will even notice.
Yeah, don't listen to, exactly. Like I've seen pictures of myself shooting. Like I have to look into to find out if I have my eye shut or
Only
not,
we
so.
notice it, right?
Yeah, exactly. We have fun. And,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the takeaway, and I agree with you, is you're going to find a lot of information, but do what works for you. Experiment, trial and effort. Don't get discouraged on this journey. This is part of the fun of doing this, is figuring this out and getting better at this. If you like this video, hit that like button, and I'll be coming out with more content, and I will be working to find shooters to see if they have other supplemental content to share information with you all. So hit that subscribe button. In the meantime, me and Marcelo got to squad up for the next match, and we'll see you at the range.